Our building right here. You can see also this is the Cooper River right here. We were waterfront property in 1773. This was the Royal Exchange and Customs House. This is the front door literally of the city. This is the view you saw coming in on board the ship. Can't see that today, obviously. There's, what, 2.5 blocks of buildings and land and streets and whatnot between us and the river today.
When did they build it?
It was over time, a compilation of things. River settlement building up over time. Garbage, trash, ship's ballast thrown in, you name it.
Miscellaneous deposit.
Miscellaneous deposit. But yeah, that's us in 1773. Royal Exchange and Customs House. This is where you came, first thing, by law. You had to send a representative upstairs to meet with the customs officers. Then you could go trade on the floor right above us. That was where the exchange floor was, kind of like a stock exchange or commodities exchange. This area down here is just storage space, but pretty impressive sight. And that's exactly the message they wanted to send, because we were known then as the crown jewel of the British Empire here in the South. In fact, South Carolina itself was the wealthiest British colony in all of North America. We had some 9 out of the top 10 wealthiest men in the whole country lived in South Carolina. And this wealth came from 2 major sources. The trade coming out of the harbor and plantations. We had 2 crops that accounted for about 2/3 of the revenue. And contrary to what you might think, with other parts of the South, the 2 crops were not cotton and tobacco here. No, rice and indigo.
Indigo, yeah.
Indigo, if you're not familiar with it, that's a plant that they learned how to grow and process here locally that you could extract a blue dye from it. Turned out to be a very lucrative crop. But like I said, that's us, the front door of the city. But lots and lots of history had happened here on this site and, prior to this, leading up to this building. So if you just follow me into this side, we're going to take you back in time, a century or so, and kind of tell you what led up to this building. Now, this model here, this represents us, Charlestown, as we were known then, in around 1718. You can see that we were a walled-in city. They walled it in for protection primarily from the Spanish and the French. That's who they were mainly concerned with, because we were English. The English had been fighting with the Spanish and the French for generations all over the world, so we were just kind of one more battlefield. But this is us, a walled city. The Cooper River, Ashley River, tip of the peninsula here. On the Cooper River side, this side, that wall was brick. These other 3 sides, big dirt wall, about 12 feet high. The whole thing surrounded by a moat that was filled with water. A couple of drawbridges located here. And today, this is the intersection of Meeting Street and Broad Street. Right up here with the big white church is St. Michael's. Of course, St. Michael's is not on here. That didn't come until the 1740s, I think, somewhere in there. But that's where that position is. Now, this building, 1771 is when it was finished, so it's not on here either. But right there, that's where we're located. This building rests right on top of that semicircle, that half-moon battery, as it was called. In fact, this building, if it were on here, it would be sticking out into the water about halfway, because the Cooper River used to run right about through here, 1718. Lots and lots of filling in, like I said. That's what's the result of it is. And you can see just a portion of that fill right here. All these artifacts were found here on the site. And that's just a fraction of what was recovered. There were thousands of artifacts similar to these that were recovered. You can see these pottery shards and things were some from Germany, some from China, all over the world. So we were involved in international trade here from the very beginning. Now, as to where all this city is relative to modern Charleston, This creek that you see here is actually their market street, the city market that you may have been to. And this creek, that's Water Street. Just a few blocks, rather aptly named it, just an old creek. And this road, that was a part of the King's Highway. It was called, the road that was ordered by King Charles to connect all the colonies together. We were kind of one of the southernmost extremities of it. Today we just simply refer to it as King Street. That's about a block or so outside the city. Been at this site since about 1680. The first settlement actually occurred about 10 years prior to that, just up the Asheville River here. At the point that we refer to today as Charlestown Landing. It's a state park. Stayed there, like I said, several years, decided this is a better location to grow, more city, relocated here about 10 years later, 1680. Been here at this site ever since. I'm going to talk some more about the first building on this site, that one right there, and about our pirate history here, and of course, more about this building itself. If you have the cameras, feel free to use them. Questions, just ask. Cell phones, if you have one, if you wouldn't mind, maybe put it on silent or vibrate. You wouldn't think we'd even get a signal down here with all this masonry, but we do. Most important thing, be careful. Watch your step. This floor is several hundred years old, very rough, uneven, so be real careful with that. Any questions? Let's head right out this little way. And we're going to go in this right over here. And watch your step. There's a little down ramp here. And just look over the railing here down at your feet. You'll see this brick wall. There, you can see more of it right over here. That's a part of that old original seawall. That wall dates from at least the 1690s. We're about in the center of it right here, so it extends for another half mile both to the north and the south of us. Right under your feet there, it's about 5 feet thick, solid brick. Some 7 million bricks, at least that's what was purchased for the construction of it. So it's a massive, massive structure. And it's still down there by and large, just buried under the streets of the buildings. Now, don't forget that where I'm standing, that was where the Cooper River was. Before this building was built on top of the old seawall. That water you see is groundwater. You know, we pump it out, it just comes right back in. But like I said, don't forget the river used to be.
That's real water?
This is real water.
I thought it was fake.
No. It's so calm, it looks like a sheet of plastic or something.
Yeah,
No, it's
yeah.
real water. And we do got to pump it out here like there is, but wet weather or something comes along, the water table rises a little bit. Now the stairs you see, they're not original, but they're pretty old also, built about 1815 because we had starting then a post office on the floor right above us. Well, this old building, like most old buildings, has been used for any number of things over the years. And they needed a way to access all this storage space down here, which is what all this was originally. So they just built the stairs, which came to the floor then, because this floor that we're standing on originally extended to this wall, when they built the building. And that's the way things stayed until about 1965, when they found the old seawall again, buried under the floor, and promptly decided just to go ahead and cut the stairs off so they could dig the floor up. Now, remember I told you this is the second building that was on this site? Mm-hmm. Well, that little model you see right there is what the first building looked like. It was built in 1704. It's called the Court of Guard. The ground floor of that building was actually the city jail. The upper floor was a big meeting space, the council chambers. That building was located over there about where those doors are. But it's in that ground floor. That's where they kept the pirates in jail, and that's who these fellows represent right here. So just step in here, let me tell you a little bit about our pirate history. Now, when you say Charlestown and pirates, most people think of two pirates in particular.
Billy the Kid. No,
Nope, not Billy the Kid.
Captain Kidd.
Not Captain Kidd.
Edward Teach.
Blackbeard. Blackbeard, Edward Teach.
Mr.
Yeah.
Teach.
Johnny Depp.
Yeah, Blackbeard
And Bonnet.
and Steve Bonnet, right there. Or Bonnet, if you want to use the French terminology on him. But yeah, this is actually intended to be Steve Bonnet right here. And the reason he has the dubious honor of being representative here, he's the one that we caught, he and his shipmates. He and Blackbeard decided in 1718 that it would be a good idea to sail up here, join forces, and blockade the harbor out there, hold the city for ransom, looking for medical supplies primarily. Well, I'm sure that seemed like a real good idea in whatever bar they hatched that plan down there in the Caribbean, but as it turned out, that wasn't a good idea, not for the pirates, because they ruined it for themselves and other pirates here anyway. Prior to that, pirates have kind of been welcomed here. You know, we were a business from the very beginning. We were a proprietorship. You know, as long as you could, you were good for business here, they kind of overlooked certain foibles like being a pirate or something like that. Now, if you were good customers of the bars and brothels and other things here, you were okay. They kind of had a live and let live attitude around here. But after they held the city hostage, they weren't welcomed any longer. In fact, after that, the ransoms were paid. The militia, and here again, we were a proprietary colony then, not a royal colony at that time. Didn't have the king's soldiers and navy out there. No, we had the militia. We had to protect ourselves. We had to send that militia after the pirates, which is what happened. They called old Steve Bonnet and his shipmates after a big battle off the North Carolina coast there. Brought them back here. They were placed on trial, found guilty, and hanged down here at the Battery in 1718. 49 of them hanged down there. There's a big stone marker on South Battery Street, right at the edge of the park there. It's got the story of the pirates engraved on it. But it was actually erected on a spot fairly close to where they were hanged. So if you're down that way, you might find that of interest. Now, lest you think that Blackbeard got off scot-free. I mean, we didn't catch him, but he was killed in battle within a few months after they captured old Steve Bonnet, here again in a battle off the North Carolina coast, but with some Virginia militia, because by then, everybody and his brother was chasing the pirates in there. They had enough on and wanted to get rid of them. But that's just a little of the history of this site. And that first building, because it's that first building that the pirates imprisoned in, not this one. Now this fellow, he's one of those customs officers that would have been on the very top floor of this building. And there were several of these guys, because we were extremely busy here, being one of the busiest ports in the country. And as busy as we were there, you know, performing the functions this building was originally designed to do, this old building's been a lot of other things over the years. We mentioned one already, that post office. But during the American Revolution, the British occupied the city and this building. And this was used as the Provost Marshal's headquarters building. He's kind of like akin to the Chief of Police, so to speak, for the military. And this space that we're in right now is his prison, his provost. Some 40 to 50 people crammed in here at any one time. Buckets for bathrooms, rats, mice, disease. Not a nice place, which is why the locals, refer to this as the dungeon, because it is as bad as the other prisons on the peninsula were. The prison ships out there in the harbor, this was the worst of the worst. But it's been used for other things over the years. During World War II, the Coast Guard had the building, and they used a large part of this space down here as a military canteen, to entertain the servicemen. At other times, other parts of the building have been a dance studio, fencing studio, had art classes given, any number of uses. You get a good view of the architecture here. The support, this is the foundation of the whole building here. It's a Roman groin arch. These are the groins, kind of like the keystone, just a few bricks thick there. Columns and walls, however, solid brick, several feet thick. A lot of brick in this building, obviously. We estimated the range of probably 2 million bricks. They were all handmade locally by slave labor, just over a couple of here in Boone Hall. Very strong too. We had a major earthquake here in 1886, destroyed a lot of the buildings in town, but relatively little damage here. Just shifted some of these columns at the ground line about an inch or so. Well, folks, if you would, just go ahead and walk across the room over there and look through that little window with bars, and then come on back and have a seat if you'd like. And while you're doing that, let me tell you a little bit about what you're seeing there. Now, I'm sure you're somewhat familiar with the what we call the Boston Tea Party today. What you may not know is we had similar circumstances going on here about that same time. That is, we had a shipload of English tea out there in the harbor. The citizens here had voted to boycott the tea. They weren't going to buy it or sell it or even unload it. Well, the British and the Patriots here knew all about what had happened up in Boston, and the British didn't want it to happen here. So they decided to bring all the tea off the ship in here for safekeeping. That's what these boxes represent, that tea. Well, that plan worked for a couple of years, kept the tea safe until we declared independence upstairs there in the Great Hall. This is one of the several historical events that have happened here. Well, as soon as that happened, that was all that the patriots in town here needed, to give them the courage to come back in here and run the British officials out, take that tea and sell it, which they did. And they used the money to beef up the city's defenses, because they knew the British were coming back, especially that's what we just got through doing. So we got to get ready for that. And of course, they were right. The British did return. They came back and attacked us out here at Sullivan's Island on June the 28th, 1776. Big battle out there. Fortunately, it turned out to be a victory for the Patriots. That's where Colonel Moultrie and his troops defeated both the British Army and Navy out there. Now, that victory also left us free of the British for about 4 years. But then, the British came back again in 1780. Several dozen ships sailed down from New York, loaded with men and equipment, and attacked the city, put us under siege. Well, after a month and a half of being under siege here, we had to surrender. But before we did, you see, we still had about 7 tons of gunpowder that had been stored at the old powder magazine over here on Cumberland Street, which that building's still there. You can visit. Naturally, the Patriots didn't want all that gunpowder to fall into the British Army's hands. So what they did, they brought it all down here, placed it in that far corner there, and then added that brick wall, to hide it from the British. Without that little window, of course, that would have been a dead giveaway, wouldn't it? Yeah, they did all that to hide the gunpowder, and it worked. Even though the British occupied the city, this building, and the prison over there in that center section, used the other floors to, house a lot of their troops also. So, had a lot going on, but they never found the gunpowder.
Never knew about it. Okay.
But eventually, the British leave town a couple years later, 1782. That's more than a year after Cornwallis had been defeated and surrendered up at Yorktown, Virginia. And as soon as that happened up there, the British knew, we're not going to win this thing. But maybe we can hang on to a few key cities or something and cut a deal that will let us keep something after all these years of warfare. Well, since we were one of those cities they were trying to hang on to, we were fortunate they weren't able to work that deal out. They were eventually ordered out. Didn't leave empty-handed though. They took pretty much whatever they wanted. They took several thousand loyalists and their slaves, lots of loot. Part of the loot that was taken was the bells out of St. Michael's Church down here. The spoils of war, that's how the British described that taking. But they did leave. And when they left, the Patriots came back in here to recover their gunpowder once again. And when the Patriots got back there, do you know what they found when they got back there once?
What?
Wet gunpowder, a lot of wet gunpowder.
Oh, because the river came out?
Yeah, the moisture, the river,
Can you dry out powder?
People that know more about powder than I do tell me that with time and care that black powder you can recover some of it that way.
That's why they say keep your powder
Obviously,
dry.
you can't heat it up with blowtorch or something like
No.
that. But whether or not they were successful in doing that, we really don't know. We really don't. But, in any event, even if they weren't, they accomplished what they set out to do, and kept right in the British.
They should have sold it to the British.
These figures that you see here, they're just a sample of some of the people that held as prisoners here. We had 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence that were held here. Hayward, Rutledge, Middleton, had some ladies, the Saracen sisters. They were arrested by the British and accused of being spies and brought here and held. Had pickpockets, thieves, British soldiers, you know. And every one was a prisoner down here on this level. Was kept in that center space right over there. Men, women, British soldiers, everybody, just thrown in there together. No way to separate them. Not a nice place, especially the ladies. Folks, one last thing I'd like to show you here, so if you would just follow me this way. This doorway was the last thing I wanted to draw your attention to. This is how they would have brought the goods in and out of this space. And you can see today, up there where the light shines, that's where the streets are. Now, the streets weren't that high originally. In fact, they were several feet lower, roughly right about there. But over the centuries, as you had the water, the sewer, the drainage, the paving, electricity, all these various levels of things, the end result is the streets around town have risen by several feet in places. So just keep that in mind as you walk around. You'll see some buildings that look like they have basements in them, but in fact it's probably due, at least in part anyway, to a change in the street line.
They just be, I saw a couple of those, or is it just because they settle?
No, the streets. have
Streets
risen-
rise up with
risen-
the dust
risen
and the
up.
dirt. And
Oh.
Cause all those levels of things
Yeah.
that have to be added over the years.
Started out with.
Folks, don't forget, 2 other floors here in the building. If you haven't seen them, I hope you'll take the time to check them out. But, any final questions about anything at all before I turn you loose? Y'all been real good, so we're gonna let you out of the dungeon here today, in case you was worried about that.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, folks, and I'll let you out right over here.
Bye-bye, thank you so much.
this thing's supposed to have a light on the front of it.
Yeah, it is.
This is the Customs House, and this is where George Washington attended a ball in his honor. I think they're marching down the street.
Is this the Washington Ballroom?
Yeah. It's
Actually,
a
I'd say it's a day and a half. It's a day and 3/4.
day and 3/4.
Probably 2 days, really.
I spent a week here one afternoon on that plane.
This is
Hey, Peg,
how's it drinking?
wave. In Savannah.
It is. Here's another one. Look at this one coming in. Is this party?
Two of them
Or
are
is
there.
this a real one? Is this a real barge? Are those all party barges?
No, I mean, good morning.
Oh, good morning.
This is our humble abode at the Hyatt location. That's it. That's the key. I don't know what I'm doing with this thing, so I'm hoping that this film comes out better than some that I took at the reunion. There's one over here working. People in that yard. Okay, still picture. Yes. I don't know if it's picture or not. That's a big boat. Yeah, that's the thing. You don't do it.
Imagine the fog breaking and you see that thing about 10 feet off your bow.
Off your dinghy.
Yeah.
I'd have to pour my whiskey in the engine to thin it out a little. Get a couple more horse. We got a lot of boxes in China. Pretty with the sunrise on the water there.
These guys are probably waiting for the tide to come.
Probably.
You can see the tides. That's an American. Oh, it's got an American flag.
Y'all wave. In Savannah. Coming your way, bro. Panning. You're in it. You are in the video. Now, that was a dry run. Where are we, Darren?
High Regency in Savannah, Georgia.
What's the name of that Capitol Dome over there? What's that for?
I think that's the City Hall. City Hall. There's a museum about the steamship that crossed the Atlantic over there.
So we'll tomorrow, probably have about noon.
Yeah, we'll go through here and then head out. We'll probably catch a little rain in there.
It's an interesting shot.
What's that? Uh-huh. Oh, I thought yeah. What's that?
You guys need another picture? Trudy, over here?
Actually laid out the first five, but we give him also credit for number 6. Watch it now. You know the pedestrian has the right of way, so be careful driving around. And I know most of you have an automobile here. You know the street parking is free all day today and all day tomorrow. Don't park like that Toyota right there. You'll get a ticket. But if you're in a legal space, you don't have to pay for the parking. So this was square number 2. Ladies, did you see the movie Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember his girlfriend? What was her name? Janet, played by Robin Wright. Well, when she was a waitress, she worked right there at that restaurant. And they filmed a segment of the movie in there. That's where she was watching him on TV. This pretty building here on our right is our U.S. Federal Courthouse. It's made entirely of Georgia marble. It's a pretty building. It used to be a big post office at one time. Now the monument, and there are 2 of them in Wright Square, the big one in the middle with the pink marble columns is to William Washington Gordon, founder of the Central Georgia Railroad. And the grandfather of a young lady named Juliet. Y'all remember Juliet Gordon? Girl Scouts?
Yep.
This was her grandfather. Now the other monument, you see the couple over there looking at it, that big boulder?
Uh-huh.
That's a big piece of granite from the Stone Mountain in Atlanta. And because of the help that he gave Oglethorpe, we consider Comitici to be the co-founder of this beautiful city. All right. There's the Independent Presbyterian Church. We're going to ride down in front of it just a minute. That steeple, by the way, is the tallest steeple in the city. And that's the Forrest Gump steeple. That's where the feather was swirling around at the beginning of the movie. How about these big trees, folks? What are they? 9 votes. State tree of Georgia. How about the gray stuff?
Moss.
What kind of moss?
Spanish.
Spanish
moss.
beard.
That's the state moss of Georgia. We ain't got no state moss. This stuff is not moss and it's not Spanish. I want to tell you something else. This is not running a red light. I don't think. You know, I've been driving here a few years now. So as long as you're in a legal space, street parking is free. You don't have to put money in the meters. You don't have to pay the park tickets. Ballastone Inn, 1838. Of course, the farmer's market. But coming up here on the left is the new visitor center. A wonderful little cafe. There's a playground for the young ones. The beautiful monument on our left is to the Confederate soldiers. Now, back in 1978, she was married to a man named Richard Rowan. So it was Richard and Paula Rowan and her mother. 3 of the original founders. Her mother passed away last year. Those are the Jetsons. Y'all remember the Jetsons? And she and her husband got divorced a few years ago, but she's still president. She's done a wonderful job. This is the Jepson Center for the Arts on our left here. This is part of our beautiful art museum. So Oglethorpe landed with its first group of settlers on February 12, 1733. Savannah was the first city in this colony. Georgia was the last of the original British colonies to be settled, including the stairwell is wrought iron.
Wow.
There's nothing made of wood on the outside of this building. He made a fortune producing it. It's a beautiful hotel now. It's haunted. There's 1790. Great restaurant, the light green building. And then the Owens Thomas house is down on the corner there. So you come back over, you know, your tickets are good. George Jones, he was a nephew of a man named Noble Jones who built Wormslow Plantation here. 1794 in that house. Second African Baptist Church on our left. And then Green Square in front of us. Named for Nathaniel Green from Rhode Island. Here's a beautiful Savannah gray brick again. York Street is one of the original streets. We're on York Street right now, 1733. And we're on our way over to stop 10, which is the Pirate's House. Anybody been there? That's three of the oldest buildings in Savannah and three of the most haunted. This is a very haunted city. The two intersections built in 1754. Anybody ready for an early lunch?
Yeah.
And we'll be coming by every 15 minutes, okay? So be careful. You gotta go up to the sign and take a right. Front door's right up there. Go slowly now. Very careful. This is number 10 on the map. There's a tunnel that goes underneath the middle of the Pirate's House to the river. That's how they used to Shanghai. Now the Earth Keeper was the man in charge of Oglethorpe's experimental garden, which was here, the trustee's garden. And this was the second reason Savannah was founded. Main reason to be the military buffer. But this experimental garden, George II and Oglethorpe were curious to know what would grow here.
This is the guy that did the architecture on where the statues were.
Uh-huh.
Tabby, that's the name of the stuff where they put